Rise Career Exploration is financially supported by listeners like you. Every dollar helps towards future podcast episodes. Click on the link in the show notes or visit us at risecareer.org today. Thank you for your support. Enjoy the show. And remember, together we rise.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hey, welcome everyone. I'm your host, Corey Alexander, licensed school counselor, author, and entrepreneur. And this is Rise Career Exploration, the podcast, where we interview guests on their professional journeys. Choosing a career can be one of the most difficult decisions of your life. Join me as we interview guests on their professional journeys. You'll find that the twists and turns of career struggles aren't unique to you, and that the path to your dream profession isn't always a straight line. Whether you are a student who wants to learn what it takes to be in a specific career, or just want to hear some great career advice, this podcast is for you. Welcome to Rise Career Exploration, the podcast. This is Season 2, Episode 10, the finale of Season 2. I want to thank all the listeners who took the time to check out the podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it was of benefit to you. And I hope you learned more than you knew before you listened to the podcast. This podcast is of Captain Joe Hayes Jr., pilot. So this is kind of cool. I have a pilot. A black pilot. It's not many black pilots, so this is going to be a treat. Captain Hayes has a doctorate from Rutgers Law School and has his bachelors from Daniel Webster College in Aviation Flight Operations. He's a man of Christian faith and serves the teen ministry, men's ministry, and various church functions at his home church in New Jersey. Captain Hayes is also a member of the Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. Additionally, as a volunteer, he serves the East Orange, New Jersey Eagle Flight Squadron as a mentor and flight trainer to teens. Please welcome Captain Joe Hayes Jr. Thank you for taking the time to do this. How you doing?
Good, man. Good. You're very welcome, brother.
Yeah, good to see you. You work later today?
No, I'm off. Actually, my wife and my 2 kids, we somehow managed to get a free ride on a COVID train. So we all picked up COVID last week, and so we're all at home recovering. Thank God it was pretty mild. I mean, with the kids getting it, my son is 3 and my daughter's 7 months. It's never pleasant dealing with them being sick.
Of course, yeah.
And then when we first started to get the symptoms, we didn't know how bad it was going to get. So it was a little stressful at first, but in hindsight, looking back, it actually was pretty mild. So I'm out of work I was supposed to go to work yesterday, but I'm out sick. So, and then I'm actually off the rest of the month anyway, unless I pick up some overtime or something. So,
all right. Well, praise God, you're on the road to recovery, and that it wasn't that severe. I'm sorry to hear that, though.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for taking the time. You ready?
I am. I just will say, if this is okay with you, I'm on my phone. My computer is acting incredibly crazy. So as a backup, I logged on with my phone. If I'm able to get my computer to work, would you mind if I switch devices at some point in the middle of it? Would that be a problem for you?
You look great, though. I mean, everything is fine. But if you feel like you want to do that, then we'll just pause it and you do that.
Okay.
But it's working great. Everything is clear. I wouldn't have even known you was on your phone had you not told me.
Okay. All right. Well, I'll just leave it as is, and I'll just shut the computer down.
All right.
All right. But yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. So the first set of questions were provided by Middle School 2 in Paterson, New Jersey, under the guidance of their teacher, Alexander Hansen. So question 1 is from Nicholas. What made you want to become a pilot?
So I grew up here in Newark. I still live in Newark. And, so I used to see the planes fly overhead all the time. And then if we would drive by Newark Airport, we were going shopping or wherever, I always was glued to the window looking outside at the airplanes flying in and out of Newark Airport. And then thankfully, when I was a kid, I was blessed where I had the opportunity to fly a few times as a kid. Not a lot, but, once every 2 years, I flew on a flight to go visit family in Georgia or, to come back to New Jersey from Georgia. So all of that to say, I enjoyed looking at the planes. I enjoyed riding by them in the car. And when I flew on them, I enjoyed being on them. So I put two and two together and figured that meant that I wanted to fly. So.
Cool. All right. Question 2 is from Joel. Have you ever had a famous passenger? And if so, who?
Yeah, I've had several. I mean, because, when you're flying an airliner, you're flying people all around the world. It's bound to happen. I don't always know when I have famous people on because it just so happens if someone happens to say. But I've had, I think it was Larry Johnson, the retired basketball player. I had him once. I had Chris Rock, the comedian. One of my flights, I had Colin Powell.
Oh, wow.
The former politician. I've done a couple of charter flights too, where I've flown baseball charters for the MLB and football charters for the NFL. We've flown the whole team to or from a game. So I've had the Cleveland Browns. I've flown the Cleveland Browns in the past. I've flown the Buffalo Bills a couple times. I flew the what do they call the Anaheim Angels, the baseball team?
Yes, Anaheim Angels. Yep.
Okay, I just flew them. It was cool when I flew them a few months ago. It was 2 rookie pitchers who had just pitched their debut in the major league. They had just got brought up to the majors from the minors, and they had just pitched their first game in the major league. And I had the opportunity to meet them and talk to them face to face. So those are just some of the famous people that I've had over the years. Oh, and then what's his name? Mike Coulter. He plays Luke Cage.
Okay.
I had him on one of my flights too.
That's cool. So when you fly a charter, do they hire you through United, or that's a side gig?
No, it's United. So the client or that company or that entity, they go to United and they say, hey, we want to charter, whether it be just one flight or we want to use you for a whole football season or for a whole year or however long the agreement, the company works out. And then the company provides them with a plane and a crew. And it's the same planes that we use for our passenger service. They just remove it from regular passenger service and have it fly those charter passengers.
That's cool.
It's regular pilots, regular flight attendants that work at United.
And I always thought every team had their own private plane. Could this be sometime when something happened to their plane, or they could just not want to own a plane and go the route of hiring you guys?
I mean, I can't speak for. I don't know. I would imagine some sports teams have their own airplanes, just how many other people who are wealthy have their own airplanes. But then some wealthy people or some wealthy entities don't want to own their own airplane. They would rather you do charter. So the people we've flown, they don't have their own planes. And sometimes like you might have the owner of the team or the manager of the team or something that might have his or own small corporate jet, but the rest of the team flies on the airlines. It just depends on the person or the entity.
Okay, great. This is from Freeland. What was the first airplane you flew?
First airplane I flew was a 4-seater trainer. My first flight, well, as someone flying the airplane, it was on a 4-seater trainer, a Cessna 172. I was in Georgia with my family. Both of my parents and my family are from Georgia, but my parents had me and my brother and sisters up here. But I was living in Georgia for a few years when I was younger. And I took my first flight in a small plane. Took my first flight lesson when I was 12 years old, and that was a 4-seater Cessna. I didn't start learning how to fly then, but I just took one flight then, just an introduction flight. So that was the first plane I flew.
So when you're training, you know how like when you go out on a road and you learn how to drive, the instructor has brakes and things of that nature. In a training plane, Does the instructor have some capabilities to take control if something happens?
Excuse me, I'm gonna take my coat off.
Sure.
A little warm. Yes, most airplanes, period, whether a trainer airplane or a non-trainer airplane, maybe I can't even say it, a lot of airplanes have dual sets of controls. So, especially the trainers, for that exact reason, the instructor needs to be able to fly the airplane in case the student hasn't learned enough to fly it yet, or in case, an emergency. But even non-trainers, like all the airliners that we fly at United Airlines, we all have a dual set of controls. That way, the captain in the left seat can fly the plane and the first officer in the right seat, because we take turns flying, so a lot of airplanes have two sets of controls. Some of the fighter jets, like in the military, they're only a one-person airplane, so clearly they're not going to have another set of controls. But that's a very special type of airplane. So.
Yeah. And after you flew at 12 years old, were you instantly hooked? Like it was a straight line? You knew that was it?
Yeah, and I was already hooked before that anyway, but getting to fly an airplane for myself, actually controlling it, was definitely something that solidified me wanting to chase the dream.
Yeah. Have you ever skydived or jumped out of the plane?
No, I haven't. When I was in college, there was a little skydiving airport next to where I went to college, and a lot of my fellow college students would go and skydive. And I always intended to, but I never did. Now that I've gotten a little older,
not so interesting. Yeah.
I don't know if I have the nerve.
I got you. More on the line. This is from Stephanie. What would you say is the best thing about being a pilot?
That's a good question. And I can't perfectly answer that question. I don't know. I'd really need some time to think, which I looked at the questions ahead of time. But so I'll just say one of the things that I like best about being a pilot, this is me speaking, and this is one of my favorite things, is landing. It just feels good. I never get tired or bored with landing an airplane, even though I've been an airline pilot for a little while now. It's just fun because every landing has its own challenge to it. You could have no two landings are the same. You could be landing on the same runway, 5 minutes after you just land on the same runway, and the one landing might be completely better or worse than the other one. And it's just a challenge to be able to land the airplane when it's windy or raining or something like that. And then to have a plane full of passengers, 100, 200, 300 and something passengers sitting in the back of your airplane, witnessing your landing, getting to try to get it a touchdown smooth. So they're happy with the landing. So that's one of the things I like best about being a pilot.
Yeah. Do you typically hear them clapping when you land? Oh, that's overrated. That's overrated. People don't usually clap as much now.
That's kind of an old school thing. Some people still do it. Some people, especially if you're like flying in and out of, you're flying some Latinos or some Europeaners. Some of our Latin brothers and sisters do that still. And in some of the European countries, if you're flying to like more of a traditional kind of an old-fashioned country, sometimes the passengers still do that. So I've seen people do it, just not every flight.
Gotcha. This question is from Enrique. Please describe your scariest flight.
My scariest flight was probably when I was flight instructing. I was flying small planes, teaching people how to fly back in 2002, 2001, 2002. And I was with a student, and we just took off in the airplane, and the engine didn't quit. It was a single engine plane. The engine didn't quit, but the engine basically went from producing full power to about half power, no matter what we did. So it was producing just enough power where we didn't descend, but it wasn't producing enough power for us to continue to climb after takeoff. So we were just kind of flying, just barely holding altitude, and we were only a couple of 100 feet above the ground.
Wow.
So thankfully, we at least, again, it was producing enough power we could hold altitude. So we just turned around 180 degrees and came back and landed on the opposite runway. So it ended up being a non-event, but it was just It was just weird because the engine didn't quit, but it wasn't doing as well as it was supposed to. So,
What state or where was that?
this is up in New Hampshire. I was instructing at the college that I had just graduated from. I went to a college that had an aviation program.
Okay.
So I was teaching college students how to fly at the school I just graduated from. And this is up in New Hampshire.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah.
This question is from Mirage. What was your longest flight from takeoff to landing?
So the longest flight that I've operated as a working pilot, it's two different flights that are the same amount of time. We do a direct flight from Newark to Honolulu, Hawaii. That's about a 10-hour flight. And on the fleet that I fly right now, the 757, 767. And then we also do a 10-hour flight from Newark down to Sao Paulo, Brazil, which is also around a 10-hour flight. So I've flown both of those flights as a working pilot. So 10 hours is me working. The longest flight I've been on in an airplane, period. A few years ago, my wife and I were going on vacation, and we flew on a United flight from Newark to Hong Kong, China. We used our travel benefits to fly for free. And so that's about a 16-hour flight from Newark to Hong Kong. So, but again, that was just as a passenger.
Wow. And speaking of Honolulu, Hawaii, I just recently was trying to book a flight there, and it was $7,000 for 4 of us.
Oh,
it
wow,
was
okay.
insane to get a direct flight from Newark to Hawaii. And I guess because of the gas prices, everything went up, but it was outrageous. And then the timing, it was around spring break, so I guess the demand, made it go up too, but it was outrageous.
Yeah, flying can get expensive. I mean, and like everything else, you just have to shop around. You look at other airlines. A lot of times the direct flight is more expensive, but you could also look at, if you didn't look, you could also look at a connective, 1 or 2 connections. Sometimes that'll be cheaper than flying direct. So hope you find something. It's worth the trip. It's worth it though if you haven't been out there.
I've been once. I want to go. I went with my family. Now that I'm married, I want to take my family. So I want to go back. That's great.
That's great you want to do that, man. I hope it works out for you.
Yeah, it will. This question is from Gabriella. How long does it take to learn how to fly a plane and get your license?
So I have to qualify that question. If there are different types of licensing. It's kind of like you can be a driver, right? You can drive motorcycles, you can drive trucks, you can drive cars, you could drive, minivans. It depends on the type of vehicle you're driving.
Gotcha.
So to be a pilot, if you're talking about being if you're talking about being a private pilot, that's one of the first levels of being a pilot. Depending on if you have good weather and you have a lot of time on your hands to fly, 2-3 times a week. Really, I should say 3-4 times a week. Then you can go from having no experience to your basic private pilot's license in a few months, 3-4 months. If you're talking about getting all of your pilot's licenses to fly professionally and, including up to your flight instructor license to teach other people how to fly. If you're flying where the weather's good and you're dedicated to flying multiple times a week, then you can go from having 0 experience to your flight instructor license in about a year.
Okay.
So just depends on
how much time you could dedicate.
Available. Right. If you have someone like a lot of people who learn to fly to become private pilots who just want to fly for fun, for a hobby, a lot of times those people are 30, 40, 50, 60 years old. They've always wanted to fly, but they just haven't got around to it yet. They finally come across a little bit of extra money and, maybe they're retired or something, or maybe they're still working. So they fly once or twice a week. They have their family, they have their job. It takes that guy a year to get his basic pilot's license because he doesn't have the money to pay for it every day and he doesn't have the time to fly 3 times a week. Then if you have someone who's 18 or 20 years old with no family, who is trying to fly professionally, who is able to fly multiple times a week, they can get their basic pilot's license in a couple of months.
Okay, and your basic pilot's license allows you to go somewhere and rent a airplane and go up by yourself? Is that what it allows you to do? The basic?
Yeah. Yeah, and the official name for it, I was just calling it basic just to make it sound more understandable, but it's called private pilot's license. Okay. There's another level of licensure below that that's even more restrictive. So I just usually kind of just talk about private pilot's license. But yeah, that allows you to fly for leisure. You can't fly. You can't be hired to be a pilot as a private pilot. It's illegal. You can carry passengers, and you can share the cost of flying with them. So let's say you go to rent an airplane, and it costs $1,000 to fly the airplane for 10 hours, and it's you and two other people. So you can each split that $1,000 in thirds, but you can't charge them, hey, listen, if you pay me $3,000, I'll fly you somewhere. No, that's you doing it for hire, for profit. So it allows you to fly some passengers and fly for leisure. Typically, unless you have your instrument rating, which allows you to fly in the clouds, if you're a private pilot that's limited to VFR, to visual, to nice weather only, then basically you have to fly when the weather's nicer. You can fly as long as you want. You just have to fly when the weather's decent, and you can't be paid to do it other than splitting the cost of a flight.
This might be a little abstract question, but do you know what John F. Kennedy Jr. license was? Because he flew, and from what I heard, he was a visual flyer. He didn't know the instruments. I could be speaking out of turn, but that's what I recall.
Yeah, I think he was a private pilot. I'm really not certain, but I'm tempted to say that he wasn't an instrument rated pilot because he had his own airplane, and his airplane was able to fly, in the clouds, but I don't think he was legally allowed to the night that he crashed, God rest his soul and everybody's with him, but the night that he crashed was one of those nights where it was legal for him to fly, but it wasn't the best idea because it was dark, it was hazy, and he was flying over the ocean. And it's even though you're allowed to fly visually like that, it's very hard to tell which way is up from down. Because when it's that dark and you're flying over the ocean and it's hazy, all you see is just black in front of you. So the only way you know if you're flying upside down or turning or not is if you are looking at your instruments. But when you learn how to be a private pilot, you do get a very, very small amount of instrument training. It's just enough for you to learn how to keep the plane right side up in case you fly into a cloud by mistake. But it's not the level of training that you get when you continue to get your instrument rating where you're able to fly a whole flight in the instruments.
Gotcha.
So that night he was flying, he probably couldn't tell which way up was from down. And because he didn't know how to follow his instruments well enough, I think he got into a situation where he basically got dizzy or something. Because, if someone picks you up and spins you around in the room,
you don't know.
Even though the earth is standing still, it still feels like the earth is.
Yes. And
even though that the room in your house is standing still, you can almost swear that it's spinning. So that's how it is in an airplane. If you don't follow the instruments and you get into a situation where your inner ear gets disturbed and you think that you're twirling and twisting, but the plane is not. So you control the airplane based on what you feel versus what the instruments are telling you.
Yeah.
So.
Thank you. That's really interesting to know. This is from Jalea. Has anyone ever given birth on your flights?
That I can recall, no. Unfortunately, I did have a lady, have a stillborn baby on a flight one day. I was flying from New York down to San Juan, and the lady was pregnant, and something happened, and she essentially, had a miscarriage in the middle of the flight and tried to deliver the baby, but the baby didn't make it. So, that happened on one of my flights.
This is from Anila. Have you ever had a flight where someone had a fight?
I don't think I've had an all-out fight. I mean, the thing is, when you're flying several flights a month, each flight the smallest airplane I fly right now holds 170 passengers. So you're flying 170, or if I'm flying one of the bigger models I fly, I'm flying 230 something passengers. You got hundreds of people from all over the world, different races, different religions, different political beliefs. You're going to have issues with people sometimes, health issues or just people not getting along. And so I haven't had any all-out fights, but I've definitely had instances where, you know, flight attendants call up and tell us that a couple of people are arguing in back for whatever reason. So we try to just de-escalate things and as much as possible, you know, but thankfully no full fights though, but it's happened plenty.
I'm sure. So thank you to the middle school students of School 2 and their teacher, Mr. Hansen. So these questions are now from me. Where are you from?
So again, I grew up in Newark, New Jersey, and Irvington. My parents are from Georgia. All my family's from Georgia. And I also lived down there for 4 years after my parents got divorced. So I kind of consider myself from both, but mostly New Jersey.
Okay. What type of high school student were you?
Somebody must have peered into my past and asked that one. So unfortunately, I wasn't the good example of a student. I wasn't a bad kid. I didn't get into trouble. Like I didn't get into fights. But I was lazy. I talked on the phone a lot. And I didn't do my homework. I would come home from school and I would just get on the phone and watch TV. So my grades really, really started to suffer because I can't say I didn't care because I did care, but I didn't care enough to do something about it.
Yeah. Got you. What were some of your early career interests?
So, you know, I really don't recall having any other than flying.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know when I was a really small kid, I liked airplanes then too, because I played with my airplane toys, but maybe when I was 4 or 5 or 6, like any other kid, I said I wanted to be a firefighter or a police officer because that's what so many kids say at a young age. So I maybe recall saying that, but really being a pilot is all I can remember.
Oh, cool. You have a Juris Doctorate from Rutgers. What type of law do you plan to practice, and what is your goal regarding that impressive achievement?
So I don't have a specific I don't have an idea of a specific type of law I want to practice. I'm not going to quit my job as a pilot. This is my dream job. My whole plan from day one when I decided to go to law school was to practice law on the side, you know, to not put it before this career or my family, anything like that. So I'm still trying to figure out what I want to do. There are different things that pull and tug at my heart, you know, based on what I see. But I'm really not certain yet. Now, the only thing is, so I have my JD, my degree, but I'm not an attorney yet because I haven't passed the bar exam anywhere. So I took some time after I was just so happy to be done with law school when I graduated in 2016. And I was so tired of paying money for everything related to law that I said, hey, I'm going to give myself a year or something to just breathe and not worry about taking the bar exam. Because most people who go to law school, they take the bar exam as soon as they graduate because most people are planning to work as a lawyer.
Law, yeah.
So me, it was pretty low stress for me because I'm like, hey, I'm not trying to do this for a job. You know, I didn't have to stress about taking the bar exam immediately. Well, of course, that 1 year turned into several years. And then when I finally did go to take the bar, I didn't pass it the first time. Then I went and took it a second time. I didn't pass it the second time either. So I have to take the bar exam a third time to finally get my law license, but I just haven't got around to it yet. It didn't help that when I was studying for it the first time, we had just had our son 3 years ago. And then when I went to take it the second time, my son was a year, but it was everything with COVID. It was just tough to study with having a newborn, a 1-year-old in the house.
That makes sense.
So, but eventually I'll get there.
Yeah, no question. What technology has made flying safer and more efficient?
Good question. So, I mean, flying inherently is a technology-filled industry. So I can't there's a number of things, but two things in particular I'll talk about. My company in particular, United, which is pretty exciting. They're investing a lot of money in becoming carbon neutral by, I think, the year 2050, which means they've committed to basically all of their airplanes and all their equipment, everything they use at United Airlines, whether it be a computer or whether it be, again, an airplane or some sort of vehicle on the ground, they have committed to no more exhaust and fumes into the environment. Or really what that means is trying to get electric equipment and things that don't put out carbon and exhaust like our cars and things do. So they've started buying, trying to get all electric vehicles for all the ground service equipment. Mm-hmm. For the airplanes, instead of using regular jet fuel, which is kerosene based, they're going to eventually try to get to where they use fuel that's made from recycled trash. They've invested in facilities. There's a few companies out there that take old trash, and I don't even know how, but with technology and chemistry, they can get fuel from old trash that's been thrown away. And then they'll eventually use that new gas to power our airplanes in the future.
Wow.
And then in addition to that, they've invested money into some sort of facility somewhere, I forget where it is, to whatever carbon that they do produce from any vehicles and things that they can't get to produce non-dangerous gases. It's some sort of facility where you can pump the carbon into the ground, and it's either stored in the ground or it's converted from carbon back to something healthy. So United Airlines is taking part in doing it. So by 2050, so just over 30 years from now, or under 30 years from now, they're trying to be a company that produces no emissions, basically, in some form or another.
That's amazing.
So that's technology. Safety, again, there's a lot of different safety things that we have, but one of the ones in particular that I'll talk about is we, as a pilot, one of the things you learn about in flying is to learn how to use different people and different things as resources. In other words, not making decisions on your own, but using other people to help you make your decisions. But using technology and other devices to do things to make your job. And we all do that in life anyway. When you're driving your car, even though you do drive your car by yourself, but if you have another passenger, if someone else in a car with you, sometimes you'll ask them, hey, is there a car coming? And make sure I'm not pulling out in front of anything. And you'll use your hands-free device to change the radio station, so you don't have to look down to change the radio station, so you can keep your eyes on the road. So one of the safety features that we build and being pilots, in particular being an airline pilot, is CRM, crew resource management, where we talk with different people to help bounce ideas off each other. So when I'm flying an airplane, it's always at least another pilot in there. On our longer flights, it's 3 or 4 of us. And even though, and so we communicate with each other. Hey, I'm thinking about doing this in this takeoff. How do you feel about that? Oh, I don't think that's a good idea because we didn't consider this or we didn't consider that. Oh, you know what? Thank you. Now we both are working together to fly the airplane safely. We do that with non-pilots as well. Flight attendants, gate agents, other people at the company. If somebody else sees something or doesn't feel comfortable with something, we all contribute to help make sure our flights are operated safely. So that's a very basic thing that we do on an everyday basis as airline pilots. We work with other people. We use technology and devices to help protect safety.
Yeah, that's great. My guess is weather makes the journey easy or difficult. What are the major challenges to get into and from safely?
When you say weather, you're talking about like the weather and the environment?
Yes.
And I'm sorry, just repeat the question one more time, please.
Sure. My guess is that weather makes the journey easy or difficult. What are some of the major challenges to getting to and from safely?
Yeah, weather definitely does affect things greatly. One of the frustrating things and safe thing, or areas that the weather affects us with the airlines, especially, is that the weather causes us to have delays and logistical issues. So we have so many airplanes and we have so many places to store those airplanes. I'll just give you a real life example. Several months ago, I was flying a flight from Los Angeles to Newark. This was back in September, I think. And a whole bunch of thunderstorms hit the Northeast, hit the Jersey, New York, New Jersey area, hit the Washington, D.C. area. So all these flights that are coming into Newark from all over the world, all different airlines, a lot of flights got affected. First, because the weather, the airport had to essentially close for a little while because thunderstorms were right over the airport. So, until those thunderstorms pass, airplanes are holding in the sky, turning circles in the sky until the weather goes away, or airplanes are being held on the ground wherever they're coming from. They're not allowed to take off, because if you take off, then you're going to get in the air and you're going to have to hold anyway. So why get in the air and hold when you can just stay delayed at your departure city until the weather gets better? Problem is, once you finally do land in Newark, all these flights that were supposed to have come and gone hours ago are still here. Yeah. So now they don't have enough gates to park all these airplanes at. So even though we landed in Newark a couple hours late, which was bad enough, then we had to wait another couple of hours on the ground before we had a gate to park at, because there was just not enough gates to house all of our airplanes. So now you have a plane full of passengers who are frustrated, who are ready to get off the airplane. They're uncomfortable after they just sat through a 5-hour flight from the West Coast. And then you have us, we're tired, we're ready to go home because I've been in this airplane for 7 hours and I can't go anywhere.
No, you can't go anywhere.
I literally can't move the airplane anywhere. And there's nothing I can tell the passengers. There's nothing I can do. So when the weather causes those types of issues, it makes life very difficult for us.
Yeah. How do you prepare for a flight?
Prepare for a flight by updating my iPad. We have a company issued iPad that has all of our manuals and our rule books on there, and all of the applications that we use for the weather, for our flight planning. They have applications on there for information about the airplane we fly. So I have to make sure all those publications on my iPad are up to date by, making sure that's up to date. And I have to make sure my iPad is charged. I have to get my uniform ready for work, iron my clothes, set my clothes out ahead of time. I have to pack my suitcase. I have to do anything around the house to make life easy for my wife while I'm gone. If I'm going to be gone and it's trash pickup tomorrow, I try to take the trash out so my wife doesn't have to worry about lugging the trash cans in front of the house with 2 screaming kids in the house. If there's things I can get done before I go to work to help make life for my wife easier, I try to take care of that as well. Then I got to, on my way to the airplane, I have to pull up a flight plan for the flight that I'm flying. Essentially the information for that flight that I'm flying. It says how fast we're going to fly, what altitude we're going to fly, the routing we're going to fly to get there. It's all the information about the flight I'm going to fly. I have to upload all that information and I have to review it to make sure I don't actually do all that planning. We have dispatchers, people who are in our corporate headquarters, who make all those calculations and they send it to us. But I have to make sure that I'm okay with how we've been planned for a particular flight. And then I have to meet up with the first officer or first officers, the other pilots that I'm flying with, to make sure they're all happy with the flight plan. And if there's any other big concerns that we need to discuss, such as the weather, any maintenance issues that we know about ahead of time. And then I have to go to the airplane, walk around the airplane, make sure the airplane looks safe. And then we have to load up the computer in the airplane. Essentially all that flight plan and stuff I just told you about, we upload all that information into the airplane itself, so the airplane knows where it's going and knows how it's going to get where we're going. So that's a lot in a nutshell.
Yeah. It's a pretty busy prep. Are pilots drug tested before every flight?
We are drug tested, but not every flight. We're randomly drug tested. We can be about to operate a flight, or we can come in from a flight, and at any point we can be drug tested.
With marijuana being legal, are you guys allowed to engage in that? Not that you would want to or not, but is it legal for you?
No, marijuana is not legal at all. So since I'm talking to a bunch of students here, that's why I would tell you, that's why you have to be careful to stay out of trouble and yeah. So just because it's legal in some places, it still doesn't mean it's a good idea for you to partake of it. So no, we're not allowed to have marijuana.
What do you do to stay current on new technology in aviation? Like, do you get trained, continuing ed classes, things of that nature?
It's a good question. So I'll be honest, unfortunately, I don't go and look up new technology on my own, which I should, just because it's always good to learn and be familiar with something, just so you know, even if it's not something you actually use. So any new technology I use is something that I'm using because it's at my job, because I'm required. But yeah, whenever the company introduces some sort of new technology, we get training on it. We have to watch CPTs, computer modules that teach us about it, depending on what the item is. If it's something very big, we'll have a class on it. We might have some sort of classroom where we learn about it, or when we go through our training at all of our pilot training facilities are in Denver, Colorado. We have the world's largest pilot training facility in Denver. And we go there every 9 months anyway for continued refresher training in the simulator, which is just like flying a real airplane. So sometimes, any new technology initiatives we'll learn about when we go through our training in Denver as well. So that's typically how we do it.
Okay, sorry, I had someone waving at me. Tell us about your time as a student and now volunteer at the Eagle Flight Squadron of East Orange, New Jersey.
Yeah, I would, quick plug for Eagle Flight, I would really, really, really encourage, any of your students to go and check out Eagle Flight. It's a great program, even if you don't want to be in the aerospace or aviation industry, even if you don't want to be a pilot, it's still a good thing to do because you learn a lot. You get to be around a lot of young men and women who are doing great things. And it's just a good program for helping you be the best version of yourself, regardless of what it is that you want to do or will do in life. So yeah, I joined the program when I was sophomore, I think, high school sophomore. I joined it in 97, basically, 1997. And it's a program that's set up kind of like the military, in that you wear uniforms. It has a chain of command and a whole process there that I did, which I didn't want to do. I just wanted to fly planes. But once I got there and actually started doing the other stuff, I really enjoyed it. Yeah. You do, drills, marching drills and things. And then you can also learn how to fly. I'm not going to say for free, but it's almost free. Okay. So that I got started in aviation because of that program. You got a kid who grew up in the hood, always wanted to be a pilot, but I didn't know any pilots, didn't know anything about aviation. And I just miraculously found out about a program that's also in the hood that teaches kids in the hood how to fly for free, or virtually almost for free. Yeah. So, it was just my dream practically fell into my lap. But and then I volunteer in there now. I don't volunteer much like I used to, but if I go and volunteer, it's just to help the students there now with their drilling, or just to be a mentor figure for the current students there, so they can see that someone likes them, or someone like them, who came from the same place as them, is doing what they may want to do. So
yeah, that imagery is important. Yep, that's great. What are the levels to achieving captain?
So to be a captain at most airlines, every company is different, but generally speaking, it's similar. It's based on seniority, and seniority basically means that seniority is it's hard to explain in a brief moment, but if me and Mr. Jones here both get hired at United Airlines as pilots, and Mr. Jones gets hired before me, whether it's the day before me or 10 years before me, then Mr. Jones is considered to be senior to me. And I'm considered to be junior to him. So if me and him both put in for the same thing, we both put in for the same week of vacation, we both put in to switch to another airplane, we both put in for weekends off or holidays off, he will get that request before me. So when an airline is growing, because it's buying new airplanes, it's getting larger, and or when people on the top of the seniority list are retiring or leaving that airline, company needs to replace those people who are leaving, and the company also needs to hire more people to help themselves grow. So they say, you know what, we need 20 new captains or 50 new captains or 10 new captains. So the first 10 or 20 or 50 people, however many new captains they're looking for, who want to become captains, first group of them that are senior enough to hold it, or again, if they're looking for 10 new captains, then the top 10 people who are the most senior will get those captain positions. So it's not based on merit like things typically are in life. It's just based on seniority.
Gotcha.
So I'm a captain because a few years ago, my seniority allowed me to be a captain. Now, once you get that award, you still have to go through training and pass the requirements. So it's not like, hey, you're a captain, here you go. No, it's like anything else here. You have to go through the training program. You have to pass successfully and to complete the process in order to do it. But in terms of just starting to become a captain, it's seniority.
Gotcha. I see you are the captain of a 757 and a 767. What are the major differences in each plane, and which one do you prefer?
Specifically the 757 and 767, or other planes?
Oh, you could share. You can elaborate if you want.
So we have several different fleets at United. We have the Airbus fleet, which is the Airbus A319 and A320. We have the 737 fleet, which is Boeing. Then we have the 757, 767, which is Boeing. And then we also have the Boeing 787, and we have the Boeing 777. And then we also have a bunch of regional jets, the express airplanes, which is unfortunately outsourced to other companies that fly with United's paint scheme. So you can fly whatever plane your seniority allows you to hold. We only typically fly one fleet at a time. So right now I'm on the 757, 767. A year ago I was a captain on the Airbus, but I just decided to switch to the 757, 767. But you can move to different fleets as you please. Every fleet has a different purpose. Just how you see big school buses, small school buses, or big trucks, small trucks. You know, the bigger trucks do the longer distance drive, and the smaller trucks, you know, just haul the short loads around the neighborhood. It's similar. We have different size airplanes. Our biggest airplanes typically do our really long flights, 10, 12, 16-hour flights. Our smaller airplanes usually do the shorter flights. You know, so it's all a matter of you with whatever type of flying that pilot wants to do here. If I want to do day trips where I go down to Florida and come back every day, then I can fly the 737 or the Airbus. I can be home every night just doing, you know, Florida day trips or up to Boston and back. If I want to do the really long haul flights, the 16-hour flights to the Pacific, to Asia and Australia, and then I can do that as well in our biggest airplanes, the 777 and the 787. 757, 767 that I do now does medium range domestic stuff. We do a lot of West Coast flying to, you know, Los Angeles, San Francisco, and I also do some European flying. So it's kind of in the middle airplane. But those are some of the differences between the different types of planes in general. Regarding the plane I fly now, the 757 and 767, it's two airplanes, but it's considered a similar type rating. Whenever you want to fly a jet as a pilot, most jets require you to have what's called a type rating, which basically means you've been trained to fly that specific jet. When I say specific jet, I don't mean that only one, not just the red one right there, but that specific type of jet. So you are allowed to fly 757s and 767s, and you only you have to get trained on that type of jet specifically, even though you've flown however many other jets. And even if you flew that jet but you leave it for a period of time, you want to come back to it, you have to go through training again to get you refreshed on it. So the 757 and 767, the 757 is a narrow body. It's just the one aisle. It's 3 seats and 3 seats. The 767 is what we call a wide body. It has a 2 aisles. So it's like 2 seats, 3 seats, and 2 seats, or however, I don't remember how our company has ours configured. The cockpits are very similar, but there's still some differences. So Boeing designed the 757 and 767 to be alike so much that the FAA, the government, said, okay, we'll allow you to train your pilots to fly these 2 airplanes at the same time because they're so similar. You just have to give them some sort of additional training to teach them what the differences between the two are. And the advantage of doing things that way is that an airline is able to use me to fly both of those types of airplanes at the same time without having to constantly train me to fly the different types of airplane. So it ends up being a cost-saving thing. And it works out for us as pilots as well, because our 767 typically we use it for more European stuff. So our 8 to 10 hour flights to Europe, or like I said, to Honolulu. And then our 757, we typically use on flights 8 hours or less. So the cool thing is I'll fly the 757 from Newark down to Orlando, Florida today. And then tomorrow I'll fly the 767 over to Barcelona, Spain. So it's nice is it gives me a nice range of types of trips that I want to do, to keep from getting bored.
Yeah,
Excuse me, I have to plug my phone up.
Sure. So I know landing is one of your favorite things to do. What's one of your least favorite things to do as being a pilot?
Can you still see me okay?
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I had to move my phone around and plug it in. My least favorite thing I'd say about being a pilot is being away from family, especially now that I have 2 small kids. I mean, this job, I need to say this because a lot of times I have seen some people, they think about being a pilot, but they're afraid that they'll spend a lot of time away from home. And I'm not going to lie, being a pilot, an airline pilot in particular, first of all, there's all different types of piloting jobs. Not every type of piloting job keeps you away from home. So know that, first of all. If you want to be a pilot, it doesn't mean you have to be away from home. There are a lot of different pilot jobs that allow you to be home every night. And even though I am away from home my fair share, my job also gives me a lot of time off. So I'm off no less than 12 days a month. The average person is only off 8 days a month, So I'm off at least 12 days a month. Now, when I'm gone, I might be gone for 3, 4, 5, or 6 days at a time. Some airlines, especially some of the cargo pilots who fly for like UPS and FedEx, sometimes they can be gone for a week or 2. But the good side of that is when I'm home, I'm usually home for 3, 4, 5 days in a row. Sometimes, longer than that. So it also gives me a lot of time off. But that's probably my least favorite thing, having to be away from my kids. Because kids grow up fast, and it's been times I've been gone for like 4 days, and I come home and I'm looking at my son or my daughter, and their faces look just different. In those 4 days that I've been gone, they look that much older. Yeah. So that's my least favorite part.
Gotcha. Tell us about your time as a federal flight deck officer during 2009 to 2012.
Yeah. I'm not allowed to elaborate on that program too much, but it's essentially a way that has allowed regular everyday airline pilots to help play a better part in helping to protect our airplanes. Because after 9/11 and hijackers took over the airplanes, they created that program, and it's just a way of helping pilots to be better prepared on avoiding being hijacked.
Gotcha. Okay, no problem. Yep. What are some of the things aspiring pilots should be doing now while in high school?
Very good question. So one of the biggest things that you can do with not just being a pilot, but anything that you want to do is read, just learn. Start reading and learning, get good, credible books, and try to talk to people who are doing what you want to do. Go out and find people, because that's one thing I notice about a lot of people, especially younger people. They're afraid to go and network. They're afraid to get mentorship, and that's important. So go and find pilots or other people in this industry who are doing what you want to do with the permission of your parents, in a safe manner. I'm not telling you to go out and talk to the wrong people in the wrong places at the wrong times. But there are healthy, safe ways that you can go out and talk to someone who's in this industry, so you can learn and so you can get a mentor, and so you can have someone who can help you, progress in your career. Because I don't care how good it is you are at what you do. Sorry, I had to decline another call. You're only going to get so far if you don't know how to help other people, and if you don't know how to allow other people to help you. So again, read, get as many books and things, credible. Don't just, I mean, the internet's fine. It's good, great for what it's worth, but we can also get a lot of misinformation from the internet, right? So go and read, research credible books, credible sources on what it is you're interested in doing. And also try to find good quality people who are doing what you want to do and learn from them. And stay out of trouble. I'll throw stay out of trouble in there. A lot of kids don't recognize that life is not a video game. You don't, while we all get second chances because none of us are perfect, you can't think that you can always make certain mistakes that you're going to be able to go through with the little consequences. So stay out of trouble is all the other good thing you can do, because you don't want to have to worry about something from your past sneaking up and causing you to have issues later on.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's good talk. We've covered a lot, and I thank you for the opportunity to speak with you. Before we get to the last question, would you like to share anything with our audience that I missed?
Not because you missed it, but this is just something that I always tell when I speak to young men and young women, and I already said some of it, but I'm not perfect, and everybody has different faiths and different beliefs, but what I've found that's helped me in my life is I try to remember to keep God first. Again, I haven't always been perfect. I am a Christian. So, I found that where I've tried to keep God first in my life and try to do things not for selfish reasons, but for heavenly reasons, it seems to have helped me in life. So I say that to give other people that encouragement. Number two, again, I already kind of talked about networking. Very, very important. Meet people, talk to those people, stay in touch with them, not just text, but by phone call. Because again, you're only as good as the help that you have around you. So don't be afraid to go and meet and talk to other people who are doing positive things and who are doing the things that you want to do. And then the final one, again, I already talked about, stay out of trouble. Be careful about what you do and what you say. Social media, what you put in the internet is eternal. You go and you say and do things on social media that's inappropriate, that stuff can come back to haunt you. So my advice is either to don't do social media, or if you do it, only talk about neutral things. Hey, this is the weather today. It's a great day. Because you just don't know.
Yeah, you just don't know.
And stay out of trouble. Stay out of trouble. Stay out of trouble.
Stay out of trouble. That's great. Thank you. Our last question is this: if you could text your younger self, what age would you text, and what would the message be?
Man, that is a really, really, really good question. And I would text myself by before my 8th grade year. So that was like, what, 92? No. That was like 93, 94, I think. Because in 8th grade is when I really started improperly caring about what other kids thought about me. That's when I started following. I didn't do it long, but I started sagging my pants briefly in 8th grade. And then I didn't do it much, but I started tagging walls. And I know now, look at me, I'm a geek, right? But that's when I just really started trying to fit in. I'm looking back on it. And so I would go back to then and tell myself what I just told all of you right now. And I would also encourage myself to read more. I didn't read much as a kid, and I realize how important that is now. And had I read more as a kid, I'd have better reading habits now. So that's what I would tell myself.
Great. That's awesome. I appreciate you. Thank you again, Captain Joe Hayes Jr., for your time. I appreciate you, and I hope your journey has blessed our listeners.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, man. This was a pleasure, man. Good seeing you. And I look forward to seeing you again on one of our Friday ministries if we could go at the same time.
Yeah, man. Mike, did you go last week?
No, I couldn't go last Friday, the 15th, I think it was.
Yeah, I didn't go either. And that turns out we ended up being more in the knee deep in the middle of this COVID stuff then. So, but yeah, man, nice meeting you too. Sorry, I'm long-winded. I should have warned you. So hopefully I didn't, put you in the red zone.
No, you was fantastic. I'm thankful for you elaborating. This is why I do this, to give students information. So I'm looking forward to sharing it with the world.
Definitely, man. Well, let me know. Happy to do it whenever you need, man.
All right, it'll be out Tuesday. I'll send you a link as soon as it's up. And I hope you like your avatar. It looks great.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm going to share that with you in a few. All right?
All right, perfect. Hey, do I get paid for it? I'm just kidding. No? Oh, man. I'm just kidding, man.
Blessings, man. Thank you. I appreciate you.
Hey, you're welcome, man. God bless you.
All right, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for spending time with us. Please share, review, and subscribe now. Follow us on social media, where we post new guest alerts and show recaps. All the information will be in the show notes. Thank you, and be blessed.